out a spark plug, screw that in there like a compression tester, and instead of going to an actual mechanical gauge, I'm going to a pressure tester. And I can use this like a compression tester. Plugs in electrically there, and that hooks up to my scope. I can use it like a compression tester, but get a digital readout across the screen. But I can also do more like a running compression test, and I can get a in-cylinder pressure waveform and know exactly what's going on with that engine. For is it in time, is it out of time? Do I have valve sealing issues? Do I have a restriction in the exhaust? Do I have a restriction in the intake manifold, or like the air filter? And all kinds of other aspects to it. And that is like next level diagnostics. That's way up there. But we were teaching that in the small update classes. Pretty heavy duty stuff. So that's in-cylinder pressure testing. It gives you let's see this. It gives you a waveform like this. And this is a compression event, here's a decompression event. I can see when my exhaust valve opens. While it's open, I can see when my intake valve opens. Here's our intake stroke, and then back up again. And by looking and analyzing that pattern and differences in the pattern, I can see faults that are happening. Usually, we end up putting these bands on there with the Ecoscope's really good at that. I can put those different bands on there and see my timing events to know what's happening. So by looking at my exhaust valve, I can tell it's opening early in this case. And that changes that because I got pressure happening that shouldn't be there because the timing's off. Intake actually looks fine just by looking at the pattern. So by one simple hookup, I can see a lot what's going on with the engine. But so that's the next level stuff.
Problem is, one, the economy kind of sucks and buying tools is expensive. And traditionally, scopes have been quite expensive. You know, the Pico scope, the ATS scope, which is even more expensive. Snap-on scopes, even more expensive. By the way, please don't buy this for a scope.
Some people like
It's not worth it for the scope you get. Now keep in mind, I have this, I use it a lot for just basic scoping, and I'm generally not using it for like checking if an engine's out of time. I generally pull out my Pico scope for that. Now what I want to talk about is the more budget options out there. Now I'm holding a launch scope, and trade secret, it's a Hanatech scope. A Hanatech scope can be bought for a couple $100 on Amazon. It is the U-scope from AES Way. Now I'll put a link to these in the description. The Hanatech scope on Amazon will be an affiliate link, and the link to the U-scope will not be an affiliate link. It'll just be a link. So click away. Now I don't have a U-scope here because I actually don't own one, but I have actually used it. It's a pretty neat little scope. It's a single channel scope, gets you into scoping. You can do a lot of basic, and it allows you to get in at a very low price point. I mean, you can hook a low amp probe to it, basic leads. It's just an awesome starter scope. A Hanatech scope is a nice step up from that. You can get it in 2-channel, 4-channel, it's on 8-channel, though I don't know anything about that one. But you can get high amp probes from AES Wave. You can get low amp probes from AES Wave. They have some really good ones at really affordable prices. That's why I'm pushing you there, not to an Amazon store. But for a couple $100, you can have a 4-channel scope that'll do really good. Now, is it as precise? Do you have as much software features as a Pico scope or an ATS scope? No. But it's a pretty powerful budget scope. Both these options are just great options if you're looking to get into scoping, and you should if you do diagnostics. To give a good example, you can sit there and monitor a crank sensor that you've got a crank sensor code on, waiting for it to replicate to see if the crank sensor actually drops out or you have a different problem, which is kind of common. I've had many false crank sensor fault codes stored because the car died. You know, fuel pump, stuff like that. Or in some cases, like the VVT not locking correctly, causing the engine to slightly be out of time, causing it to stall, etc., etc. But it allows you to prove that it wasn't the crank sensor, or prove that it was the crank sensor. That's the value of a scope. It allows you to precisely tell what is actually wrong with the car instead of going off a code. You know, that whole testing and not shotgunning parts. So I wanted to bring this video to kind of push people to get into scopes. They're not really that expensive anymore. It's awesome that you can get into scoping with a cheap laptop, a cheap Hanatech box or something like that, and get to scoping. Now there's tablets based like the MSIG, those are awesome as well, but they're a higher price point. You know, a lot of people have a halfway decent Windows laptop they can use with this. I mean, heck, you can get a long USB and run it to your shop computer. Just for giggles, I've thought about putting Pico software on my Snap-on. I haven't, but I could. So get out there, get scoping. There's tons of budget